Hello, everyone. We're going to try that again because apparently I just could not get a word out. So, we are going to be getting back to The Legend of Huma and Chapter 25. And one of my favorite little details, oh, you can actually see it more clearly if I hold it out, is every chapter has art for the header, and this one has a diagram of how the pintle mounting on the Dragonlance saddle is built, which I just think is so cool that somebody actually did that. They told me it was you, but I could not believe it, not after the tales that have circulated. Tales? Huma and his companions had climbed down from the dragons, where they would have been swarmed by knights and common folk alike if not for the quick thinking of Lord Grendel, who controlled the keep's defenses. Several of the well-trained veterans who made up Grendel's force were out and around the newcomers within the first minute after landing. Lord Oswald, Grand Master, indicated to Huma himself. You know of what I speak, the stories of your battle with the demon who seeded plague and dissension throughout the land. Renard? Renard. Amazing how faulty their memories can be. When he was revealed for what he was and you defeated him there, they quickly forgot how much they wanted to believe the rumors that he spread. They blamed him as an evil demon or cleric, I forget what exactly. Then, to top it all off, you supposedly vanished into thin air like Paladin himself. Huma's face turned a dark crimson. The part about my vanishing is true, but I assure my lord that it was not by my own power. Indeed. Lord Oswald's eyes strayed to the dragon lances, and his body seemed to shake momentarily. Are those, then, what you've been seeking? What we've so desperately needed? Yes, my lord, the dragon lances. We would have been here sooner, but we became caught up in the battle. I dare say I've had men and dragons alike speak of how the 8 of you came from nowhere, dealing fear and death to the Dragon Queen's lackeys. Perhaps they're right. Perhaps you are paladin in mortal guise come to Krynn. Lord Oswald, the Grand Master chuckled. I've not come around to that way of thinking, Huma. Not yet. Despite his evident desire to inspect the lances, Oswald turned to the rest of the Huma's band. I know you, Minotaur, and I'm glad that I had faith in you. You live up to all the good that I have heard of your kind. I thank you for your assistance. Kaz was oddly quiet. I did what I was required to do. I have sworn an oath to Huma. Is that all it was? The Grand Master smiled and turned to the others, starting with Lord Avondale. There was just a hint of coolness in the Grand Master's tone. I welcome you, Argothian commander, as a fellow knight. Do not suppose you've brought your army with you. When we met that one time, Grand Master, I knew you would someday hold the present position, but I hoped it would mellow you before we had to face each other again. Oswald accepted the veiled reprimand with a more genuine smile. Forgive me if I sometimes forget that I am also in the presence of a cleric of Paladin. Huma, Kaz, and Boron looked at one another. While they respected Lord Avondale, they would never have taken him for a cleric of Paladin. Then again, who was to say what a cleric had to look like, so long as his belief and his ways did not contradict the teachings? You've let out my secret, but it's just as well. Perhaps Huma will now understand why I wanted him to accompany me to Kergoth. When I noted the sign of Morgion on such an obviously loyal knight, I worried that he might be marked from some foul deed. Avondale turned back to Huma and smiled. The Grand Master turned from Avondale and regarded Boron with some amusement. With his great beard, the knight from the southwest stood out. Boron was shaking in the presence of the Grand Master. You are... The knight blinked several times before blurting out his name. Boron, my lord. From one of our remote Argothian outposts, I imagine. Yes, my lord. Boron was white. Good man. Lord Oswald patted him on the shoulder and turned away. Boron breathed a sigh of relief and gave a sickly smile. Now then, Huma, the Grand Master was all seriousness. If you'd be so kind, I would like you and your companions to join me in my quarters. I want to hear everything. Oh my god, I want to hear everything. Yes, my lord, but the dragon lances will be handled with care and placed in a safe location until we decide what can be done with them. Now, come, I suspect you all could do with something to drink. I know after today's near catastrophe I could. Huma's report was punctuated every now and then by the thunder and lightning playing havoc in the mountains to the west. Takesis letting loose her rage on those who had failed her, Kaz suggested. Or perhaps Galandracos, furious over his followers' failed attempts to seize the dragon lances. Lord Oswald tapped the table as he absorbed all that Huma had related. Paladin, I never would have believed it if it had not been you, and to actually see him. Oh, you make an old man proud, Huma. Dorak would have been proud, I know that. Thank you, my lord. That compliment meant more to him than all the others. Made from dragon silver by a smith with one silver arm, bearing a god-forged hammer as well. Huma looked perplexed. I made no mention of that. The Grand Master smiled knowingly. I am a student of old lore, Huma, which is one reason I believed in you all along. If this smith is as you described him, he must be bearing a hammer that was forged by Ryrix himself. I'm thankful that our ancient records are true after all, and you've lived to bring the weapons to us. Something had been building up inside Huma, and he finally stood. My lord, I beg of you, I appreciate all that you've been saying, and I know that there was much you had to hear, but we now have the dragon lances, and I must ask you a favor. There are 20 lances that may be utilized in the heavens. Give me but one lance, and let me fly to the domain of Galandracos and his dark mistress. I must free mages. Knight Huma. The Grand Master's voice was toneless, frighteningly akin to Renard's. Lord Oswald stared at him until Huma sat. One man or one woman, be they companion, lover, or blood kin, is not worth the lives of hundreds, and I say that even if I were that one. You may disagree with me, and that is your prerogative, in private. We are fighting for the existence of all of Solamnia, all of Ansalon, if not Krynn itself. I cannot condone your idea. He was taken defending the lances. Huma's bitterness began to show. I understand that, Knight Huma, as I understand the dangers to you that I think you do not. My answer remains the same. Understood? Huma said nothing. Now then, you have 21 lances, one of which is designed for a foot soldier, you said. Yes. 20 lances are hardly sufficient. We're fortunate this time in that the dragons did not expect you, and your sudden appearance threw them into confusion. They fled with their tails between their legs, remarked Kaz smugly. This time, when they next come, and do not believe that they will not, they will act with more cunning and more confidence, and 4 lances, let alone 20, will not prevail. You're claiming the fight is lost already. This is not what I expected to hear from the Grand Master of the Knights of Solamnia, Lord Avondale commented. The Grand Master ignored the look of disdain on the Argothian's face and kept his gaze fixed on Huma. While some may see this as accepting defeat, it is only because they have not bothered to wait and hear. What we need to do is clear the smithy of all else and create, as accurately as possible, lances as near in quality to the originals as we can. Guy Avondale's eyes narrowed, and a thin smile played across his lips. Kaz and Boron exchanged looks of puzzlement. Huma hesitated, then saw where the Elder Knight was heading. A ploy! We're going to ensnare them in a great bluff! Lord Oswald smiled, an edge in his gaze. A bluff, exactly. We already have the setup for creating ordinary lances. Now we shall make as many faithful forgeries of the dragon lances as possible. How long will that all take? Asked Avondale. As you yourself have indicated, it will not be long before they return. Metalworking in most its forms is an art with us, Commander. It is part of the secret of our success. Shoddy weaponry and protection make for shoddy armies, paraphrasing of something in the measure. Given 2 days, we will have more than 100 lances. They will be, as I said, copies, forgeries of the true dragon lances. The word has no doubt spread as to the cause of the rout. When next we face them, I hope we have at least 100 lances ready. When the dragons of Takesis come, they will find themselves facing a veritable cavalry charge. The element of surprise will be ours. I'm hoping that 100 lances, supposedly actual dragon lances, will cause a new panic. With the dragons at bay, our own forces will advance and meet the ogres. This is more than a bluff. You intend to win, dragon lances or not. It is an interesting plan. You have faith in it, truly. As a cleric of Paladin, you should know. Besides, it is not so much the plan that I have faith in as in my men. We are, after all, Knights of Salamia. Huma. He had been walking alone, trying to sort out all that was happening. Mages, the Dragonlances, Galandragos, Gwyneth. Huma! He whirled. She was there in the shadows of the stable. She was clad in flowing robes of silver blue, her slim form partially revealed as she walked towards him. Huma could only gape. Gwyneth? She smiled. You expected someone else? No! I wanted to come to you earlier, but it wasn't possible. There are some things I must sort out. I hope you don't mind if I walk with you, though. No, not at all. Gwyneth took his arm, and the two walked slowly around the courtyard. It was the first nearly clear night that Huma could recall. There were even patches of actual sky, as if the cloud cover at last were breaking up. Huma knew better than to hope that it would vanish. Only one thing would bring that about: total defeat of the Dragon Queen. It took him some time to build up the nerve, but at last Huma asked, How did you get here? She turned her face from him. Please don't ask that now. I promise I'll tell you soon. Very well. I'm just glad to see you. That made her turn back. I'm glad of that. It makes everything worthwhile. Gwyneth's expression suddenly darkened again. I heard something about you wanting to go after mages by yourself. The Grand Master forbids it. Well, what will you do? I obey the Grand Master. It's my duty. They were silent after that. Gwyneth had rested one hand on Huma's arm, and, as they walked, he was astonished at the strength in that hand. There was so much that he did not know about her, including her connection with the Dragonlance. She must be a cleric, he decided, but of which god he was not sure. Gwyneth suddenly stared ahead and stiffened. Huma followed her gaze and caught sight of an unfamiliar male of approximately his own age. The man was dressed like a villager. They had come straggling into Vingard Keep just before the war reached their homes. But his stance was not like one of them. The face was fairly well hidden by shadow, but Huma could have sworn that the eyes blazed. After glancing at both of them, the stranger disappeared round the corner. Who's that? Huma's hand fell to the hilt of his sword. If someone stalked Gwyneth. No one, she replied, much too quickly. Gwyneth disengaged herself from Huma's arm. I have to leave now. I'll see you again later, I promise. She turned the way that they had come and hurried away. Huma thought to follow her, but she was out of sight almost instantly. The night blinked, and he could not recall when or where she had turned. Reaction to the Dragonlances was not what Huma and the others had expected. He had offered to demonstrate the methods and uses of the Dragonlance. To his amazement, only a handful of knights came to see him. One of them revealed the reason for the astonishing apathy among the brethren. Huma, stunned, told the others what the knight had said, and how widespread those feelings were among the knighthood. The time for miracles is past. They will not accept the magic of the lances. Who can blame them? We are asking them to risk their lives uselessly as far as they are concerned. Those who ride with true dragonlances will bear the brunt of the assault and then attempt to break through and strike at the heart of evil, Galandragos and his infernal mistress. But suicide is against the oath and the measure, and few have true faith in Paladin where this is concerned. I was told a few believe I created the lances myself. They want to know why they should risk their lives so needlessly when they could be here with their comrades, fighting a definite foe on more equal terms. Fighting dragons is one thing. Facing the Dragon Queen herself is folly. That message was relayed to me more than once.
Need sweat. It's still damp. It's cold. It's yeah. We had a heck of a rainstorm this morning and my sweater is still wet.
Lord Oswald rose at that point. They'll risk it, curse them. They're knights, not skulking thieves. I'll order them to take the lances and to use them. And they'll die, Avondale threw in.
What's that?
The two commanders locked eyes. They'll die, Grandmaster. With little or no faith, they'll simply die. It's not a matter of whether the power of Paladin flows within the Dragonlances, the hand that guides the weapon. also must believe, or else reactions will be a little too slow, a little off the mark. They must have faith as we do, or they will lose because they will see the lances as they have seen all lances, objects that will bend, break, or shatter on the hides of the dark dragons. But a dragon lance! The Argothian cleric held up his hand for silence. We have 20 dragon lances, correct? Plus the footman's lance, Huma quickly added. 20 lances. All we need are 20 men. I think Paladin is watching over us. If there are only 20 dragon lances, then there is a reason. If we are to obtain more, Paladin will see to it that we do. If our faith is strong, 20 lances or 1,000, we will triumph. Lord Oswald looked at Huma. He's right. Huma studied those assembled in the room. Kaz, Boron, and Avondale would follow him on this. He needed only 16 other men. Let there be just 20 then. More than one eyebrow was raised at that. Huma did not wait for questions and said, plunging immediately into his thoughts. Boron, Kaz, my lord Avondale, I know that you three will join me. You know the Dragonlance. You know what it can do. If 20 Dragonlances are all that stand between us and defeat by the Dark Queen, then we should thank Paladin that we have even those and use them to the utmost. You should have been a cleric, Huma, for your faith is stronger than any I've ever known. There was no mockery in Lord Guy's tone. There was a knock on the Grandmaster's chamber door, and one of the Knights of the Rose who made up the ruling Knight's Guard entered. Grandmaster, Knight Bennett wishes to speak with you. I summoned him from the keep walls some time ago. Where has he been? He did not say, my lord. Lord Oswald glanced at Huma and then nodded slowly. Allow him to enter, my lord. The guard spoke to someone in the hall and then stood at attention. Bennett, looking more like his father than Huma had ever seen him, stalked imperiously into the room. He saluted his uncle deferentially and acknowledged the presence of the others politely, though he stared long and hard at the Argothian commander. What is it, Bennett? Uncle... Grandmaster, I've been studying the Dragonlances. The elder knight's expression darkened. Who gave you permission? Some of the imperiousness vanished. I did it of my own accord. I could not help it. After you spoke to me of the following his disappearance. Bennett looked at Huma as he talked, but the latter could read nothing in the stiff, hawk-like features. And? His nephew's eyes widened. The mask fell away, and both Huma and Lord Oswald were astonished at the wonder that spread over Bennett's face as he spoke. They were smooth to the touch, so smooth that they must cut the air effortlessly. I've never seen a point so sharp, nor a metal so bright, so alive. I have heard that many doubt the authenticity of the lances, but I cannot believe but these were here sent to us by Paladin through his chosen champion. For the first time ever, Huma felt a deep respect emanating from the Grandmaster's nephew, and directed at Huma himself. Lord Oswald was no less surprised. Kaz snorted quietly in derision, but the look Bennett threw him caused him to stop immediately. I want to be one of them, Grandmaster. I counted but 20, and I know not if we will have any more, but I want to be one of them. It is what I have trained for, to give myself in service to the Triumvirate and to Paladin. I will face any test if needed to prove that I am worthy. Bennett exhaled, and his shoulders slumped. He had bared himself to all present, and now awaited judgment. The Grandmaster looked from Huma to Avondale, and then back to his nephew. Knight Bennett, you are, I see, the son of my brother before the strain of leadership tore us apart. If you can but remain as you are now, I see in you what many have always believed, that you will be among the first and best in our ranks. Bennett's shoulders stiffened in unconcealed pride. Oswald continued, If you would truly be what we all strive to be, then I ask that you make your example this night here. He pointed at a stunned Huma. For he is the embodiment of our teachings, whether or not he believes it so himself. Am I then? You are, and I charge you with a special task. Find others like yourself, from all 3 orders and numbering 15 in total, who are willing to believe in the strength and the will of Paladin, and who will ride the skies with the Dragonlance before them. Bennett nearly stumbled towards the door, then turned to his uncle. Lord Oswald waved him off. The Knight of the Rose departed in haste. Bennett did exactly as he was told. He sought volunteers from all three orders and chose them based on merit and belief, not whether they were loyal to him, as he would have done prior to his father's death. Among the volunteers were veterans and near novices, included by Bennett, surprisingly enough, were 3 knights who lacked limbs or who were permanently disabled, all from the war. Had this been peacetime, Lord Oswald would have given these men work in the keep, something to keep them active but away from awkward situations. Now, though, every man who could fight was needed. Men who had lost a leg could still ride and swing a sword. One useless arm still meant that the knight could use his other. A knight of Salamnia did not quit until he was either triumphant or slain. Had they eliminated such men from the ranks, the available forces of the keep would have been cut by nearly a quarter. With the retreat of the Dragon Queen's forces from the vicinity of the keep, lines of supply reopened, albeit sporadically. Awaiting their first opportunity, knights in the southern reaches shipped food and raw materials. It was dangerous going, for the ogres and dragons still harried the routes, and some wagons never completed their journey. The mountains to the west were ominously quiet, and Huma found himself staring at them on and off. Magus was still out there, and Huma felt the desire to attempt some sort of a rescue. Waiting in the keep for whatever Galandragos and his mistress plotted next irked him. It might have been easier if Gwyneth had been with him, but she had not returned since that one night. Huma had taken to conversing with the silver dragon. They spoke only when alone together, for the presence of the other dragons guarding the keep, and especially the silver dragon's 2 siblings, who watched Huma intently each time he came round, embarrassed him. She listened to his every word and answered his questions with such intensity that it was often easy to forget that he was speaking with a creature vastly larger and more ancient than he. At the same time, she seemed filled with a sadness that Huma was never able to identify. He pressed her only once on it. When Huma had probed too far, the great dragon had turned and moved away without another word. Huma could not explain the reasoning behind the feeling that had surged through him then, but he somehow knew that the sadness which had become so much a part of the Leviathan was due to him. He was careful never to bring up the point again, for fear of what truth he might discover. Oh. 3 days passed, and then it was as if the heavens themselves had erupted. Knights in the keep pointed skyward, and the murmuring began. Though they would deny fear, many turned pale as they remembered the last time the sky had looked like this. Huma rushed to the battlements, Kaz and Boron close behind him. Both Huma and the Minotaur stared through narrow eyes at the horror before them. Boron, having come from the southwest outpost, had not been present at that time, but he studied the scene and then turned to his companions, seeing for the first time the looks on their faces. Turning pale himself, he asked, "What does it mean? Why is it so black?" The rolling darkness, which had nearly lost the war for the knighthood in that earlier battle, spread slowly towards the outermost lines of defense. The winds round the keep were building to a pitch. Once again, they have another diagram. It's absolutely gorgeous. I love when little details like this kind of stuff are added in. Chapter 26. The dragon lances! We must fly now! The others were gathering even as Huma and his companions entered the courtyard. Bennett looked to him as an aide might look to his commander. Here, Huma was in charge. The dragons were there also. They had trouble in choosing who would join with the knights. Unlike the humans, all the dragons volunteered. It was the silver dragon who finally chose, she being most closely associated with the lances. Her choices were not questioned, for each of the volunteers was picked on the basis of past performance and physical endurance. There were silver ones, bronze ones, Bolt being the most vocal of these, and even a gold dragon. More than enough saddles had been made, and well-trained knights were already finishing with that part of the preparations. Someone had also thought to secure the footman's lance to the silver dragon Huma would be riding. When all was ready, Huma turned to see everyone waiting. Then he grimaced, realizing that they were waiting his orders. Even Lord Avondale, who Huma felt was certainly a more qualified flight leader, was deferring to him. Turning forward and assuring himself that all was secure, Huma kicked the silver dragon lightly and gave the signal to depart. What an impressive sight, he thought, as he momentarily turned back to look. The 20 dragons made an arrowhead formation with Huma at the point. Kaz and Bolt were to his left, a little farther back, and Boron was to his right. He could not see Lord Avondale, who was flying to the rear. His thoughts were broken by the visage of the silver dragon as she turned to speak to him. Huma, I... He looked ahead, expecting to see the Dragon Queen's children breaking through the darkness. Nothing. I merely wish to say that you can count on me in all things. I will always be thankful, he shouted, for the wind was now so great that it roared in his ears, and he could not be sure how well she heard him. She'd already turned away. It became a battle merely to enter the curtain of blackness that had been raised by the followers of Galandracos. The winds were fierce, the riders were strapped down, and the dragon lances were hooked to their mounts for safety. Huma and the silver dragon were the first to enter, and it was as if there were no Kryn. The sky and earth were gone. There was only the knight, the dragon, and his lance. No, Huma realized, there was more. Behind him he could see the glow of the other dragon lances. At first, Huma worried that they would shine like beacons to the forces of Takesis. Then he saw how the lances ate away at the darkness, destroying the spell. It did not matter whether they were seen or not. The darkness ceased to be a threat. "We're through!" the silver dragon shouted. The world snapped back into existence. When Huma had wandered on foot, it seemed such an incredible distance, an endless darkness in which things not of this plane chittered and slunk towards their unseeing prey. Now it seemed like nothing. The enemy dragons were upon them. The first came at Huma and the silver dragon as they emerged again into the light. One lone rider and a dragon must have seemed easy prey for the red dragons, and the two of them turned from their brethren to deal with Huma. The other dragon riders began to emerge behind Huma, though, and the easy prey became the deadly hunter. The two overconfident reds fell swiftly, unable to break away in time. The others, black, blue, red, came much more hesitantly. It seemed to Huma that they attacked only out of fear of their own mistress, a fear greater than that of the dragonlances. One of the 20, Halloran, a newly appointed but skilled knight of the crown, went down, burning from the acidic blast of his foe. The other knights had accounted for 4 of the enemy, and the rest of the dark dragons turned in retreat, deciding to risk the wrath of the mistress. Some knights wanted to chase after them, but Huma signaled against that idea by remaining on his present course. Huma's target was the source of the shifting darkness. Several times they faced onslaughts of creatures of the air. There were dragons of nearly every color. At one point they clashed with large bird-like creatures with leaning jaws and 3 pairs of claws. Another dragon rider was lost to horrors that could only have been the mad creations of Dracos himself. Huma was particularly saddened by this loss, a scarred veteran of the Rose named Marek Ogrebane. He had been one of the disabled knights and was the first to volunteer. Now only 18 remained. As they flew, Huma memorized the place and the circumstances of each death, hoping to mark the bravery of these men in some way later on, in song or in verse. They were close, Huma knew, close to the source of the spell. He could feel it. "I spy something, Huma," said the silver dragon. "Where?" "Down there, to the right." He followed her gaze. There was nothing but a hill, barren but for a few bent and decaying trees, arranged almost in a pattern. Certainly not what he was anticipating, and he told the silver dragon so. She smiled knowingly. "Look not with your eyes, Huma. Look with the wisdom of Paladin. Have you ever seen trees growing in the form of a pentagram?" The knight looked again. He realized how precise the pattern was. As he observed, the trees began to waver as if they were not real. They did not fade, but twisted into brown-robed forms, like the mage who had attacked Huma in the woods in what seemed like such a long time ago. Now he saw them more precisely. Nearly a dozen figures squatted in the dirt, their heads down, their arms outstretched towards the center of the pentagram, where one of their number stood with arms raised high. "Shall we take them? They seem unaware," Kaz shouted from the side. Bolt eagerly expressed similar sentiments. "I want to take them alive if possible." "If possible!" Bolt plunged ahead and barely missed being grievously wounded as something rose and shattered the air currents, as if lightning had emanated from the earth. Kaz and Bolt circled for another try, and this time, when the attack came, Bolt easily dodged it. A crack of lightning split the heavens and struck the hill. When the smoke cleared, a small crater marked where the figures had been. Huma turned at the sound of laughter coming down from the silver dragon. "Thus his nickname, Bolt." All bronze dragons are capable of that trick, but only a few have such precision as he has shown, and none are his equal. Their defenses shattered, the renegade mages were suddenly active. They rose as one and turned towards the newcomers. Though Huma could not be sure from this distance, he thought their faces were remarkably similar. They all might have been siblings. Then Huma realized what was so similar about each figure. They acted as if under a spell or with such concentration that it had become etched in their faces and movements. They were, in a sense, only one being, and they were pointing their hands towards Huma and the silver dragon. "Dive!" he cried, but she was already doing that. The renegades tried to follow their progress, but the silver dragon wove a complex tapestry of turns and dives. While the mages concentrated on her, the other dragon riders moved closer. How long could the renegades keep up this defense and still maintain the darkness, Huma wondered. "Huma! Beyond!" Just over the hill, and marching steadily along, was the ogre army. The land was literally crawling with ogres, their human allies, goblins, and a few unidentifiables. Experiments of the mages, no doubt. Things with too many arms, too many legs, even too many heads and trunks. The very air ripped apart as he watched, and Huma had a glimpse of a place known only to him in a nightmare and a prayer. It was only a glimpse, but of blackness so overwhelming, so ready to devour him, that he knew it would only be the abyss. They had that much strength. They had opened a rift in the mortal plane, and it would swallow him. Huma shook uncontrollably, and even the silver dragon wavered at that sight. The rip seemed to widen, giving them no place to run or hide. It came closer. Then the power keeping the rift open crumbled as the renegades felt the oncoming dragons of light. The mages had reached their limits in concentration. Too many things were happening of too great importance. As the dragons attacked, the first one, then another, a few of the renegades stood to fight and died on the spot. The rest scattered, the link between them destroyed. Behind them, the darkness dissipated. Things screeched in horror at the light. They had been bred in the darkness, perhaps even in the abyss. Light to them was death. Their forms could not exist without the darkness. They faded away like dew, leaving no trace of their coming nor going. That would not, however, deter the massive force that marched even now towards the hill where the mages had scattered. The Dragon Queen's commanders, lacking the imagination and daring of Crinus, were throwing all they had into the first battle. The silver dragon turned to Huma again. "They're frightened, Huma, not of us, but of Galandracos and the Dragon Queen, I think." "What can we do?" "You can die!" Behind him, Huma heard shouts and cries from the others. Before him, a figure hovered in midair, with arms folded, smiling smugly from beneath a brown hood. He was tall, perhaps even taller than Huma, and slim, more like a well-trained knight than the mage he obviously was. Other than his reptilian smile, the floating spellcaster's face was little more than a shadow. "Galandracos." Huma whispered the name to himself, but it was apparent the mage understood, for he cocked his head in acknowledgment of his identity. "You are Huma. You look quite different when seen through human eyes. One failing of the Dreadwolves. One sees as they see." Huma could barely restrain himself from ordering the silver dragon to charge the floating figure. Here was the living embodiment of all that was evil. Galandracos was smiling broadly. "You're wasting your time, good knight. True, those lances are an advantage over the dragons, but you have, had only 20. There are far too many dragons. See for yourself." The mage indicated the horizon behind him. Huma squinted. A dark mass was coming up over the horizon. At first he thought it to be another spell of darkness. Then he saw that the mass was not one thing, but many large flying creatures. Dragons, the children of Takesis, hundreds of them. Galandracos was still smiling when Huma turned to him. "With my Dark Lady's aid, I have summoned them from all over Krynn, every last one. Black, red, white, green, all the different dragons. They've been flying for days to come here, and they have almost arrived. 20 lances, 18 now. 18 against hundreds and hundreds of dragons. If only they had more lances. If you surrender now, there might still be a place for you. My mistress has been quite impressed with your ability to survive. If you would be willing to turn your talents to her, she would prove most grateful." The renegade smiled. "You've really seen only her warrior persona. She has other talents of equal wonder." Below him, the silver dragon gave an uncharacteristic hiss of fury, and Huma suddenly found himself closing in on the mage. Oddly, Dracos only laughed as the great Leviathan leapt at him, jaws wide, claws foremost. The jaws clamped harmlessly together. "Illusion," Huma muttered. A mocking laugh seemed to hang in the air. The group hovered uncertainly, awaiting instructions from Huma. He continued to stare at the spot where the illusion of Galandracos had floated. Unable to stand the waiting anymore, an unidentified knight behind Huma cried, "We've lost!" "We've not lost until the last knight is dead, Derek." Such a... Aerith and Bob. Bennett shouted at the man. He whispered to the gold dragon, who promptly moved in close enough so that he could speak to Huma without being overheard by the other riders. "What do we do now?" Bennett asking him for guidance. If the whole situation had not been so tragic, Huma might have laughed. "Pull back. We must warn the keep. With so few lances, we ought to circle Vingard, make the taking of us as costly a task as possible." "You're giving up?" "Not at all. For now, the defense of the keep remains our best option." Huma turned to the others. "Back to Vingard!" Huma tried to hide his own disappointment as they turned to flee the oncoming horde. The situation seemed hopeless. Something bright glittered in his eyes then, and, at first, Huma thought it was the reflection of the sun. Only he suddenly realized there was no sun. What glittered in his eyes was a light with no visible source. As Huma's eyes focused on the tiny flickering light, it seemed to beckon. It was not exactly light, more a greenish glow. It reminded Huma of the glow emanating from the Sword of Tears. The glow seemed to flutter earthward, and Huma hesitated. Huma drew the dragon's attention to the glittering object. "What do you make of it?" "A messenger of some sort, but I suspect its maker wears black. Ignore it and let us return before things worsen. I do not like it here." She was acting strangely, Huma realized. She had been quiet and almost sullen since her attack on Dracos had failed. It had been Dracos' comment on his mistress's charms that had set her off, Huma realized. But why? Had the Silver Dragon been afraid that he would fall prey to such a false dream? Huma took a deep breath, shook his head. "Follow the light down." "Huma, do it!" He'd never spoken to her like that, but he did not think that he could trust her reactions at this moment. The decision would be his. "Huma!" Kaz called from ahead of him. Huma shook his head and pointed towards the keep, his face expressionless. The Minotaur muttered something to Bolt, then turned to the others to see what was happening. Kaz shouted something. Regardless, the massive Easterner would wait with his dragon while the knight investigated whatever held his fascination. With reluctance, the silver dragon began following the greenish glow downwards. When they had reached the base of a particular hill, the greenish glow tinkled abruptly out of existence. The silver dragon landed, and Huma looked around expectantly. "I come in peace, Knight of Solamnia." The voice was low and grated on the ears. Its owner was the image of a short, wiry man with an oversized head and narrow, weasel-like features. Not a stitch of hair grew on his head. He wore a black robe. "A trick! I told you!" The silver dragon reared up, ready to defend Huma. The black robe cowed, though there was no fear in his eyes. Huma shouted until his companion quieted. He was becoming disturbed with her new restiveness. "Hear me out," grated the dark mage. "Hear me out," grated the dark mage. Huma stared sullenly at the black robe. "What do you have to say? I've already spoken with your master." The magic user made a face. "There you touch on the point of this meeting. That renegade who has styled himself our master. That carrion!" "You both serve the same mistress, do you not?" "Listen carefully, Knight of Solamnia, for I've no way of knowing when the cur will notice my absence. We need your agreement." "Mine?" Huma blinked. "A black robe seeking aid from him?" "We know of you, We know of you through one who has worn many robes in his life, who even now wears another, in spirit if not in body." "Magus." The knight leapt on the vague description. "Where?" The spellcaster raised a hand to silence him.
"No time for that. Listen, we know now that if the Dragon Queen is victorious, we will be no more to her than you are. Dracos has already become her mortal voice, and his world will seem one born from the abyss itself. You've seen his abominations. Would you like to see them made permanent? We wish to join with you. Better to die fighting than to be forever at her mercy. And she will have a special place for both our orders. Mark me."
An offer of alliance from a black robe? How can I possibly believe you one of her creatures? The mage straightened.
My first and foremost loyalty is to Nuatari, Dark Lord of Magic. We erred in believing we served him when we chose to serve. I will not call her his mother. Let us say that she who had given birth to him. Nuatari, though, cares for this world. That is why he, Lunatari, and...
The spellcaster hesitated, saying the name.
Even Solinari of the Light abandoned the struggle for Kryn and created the Orders of Sorcery as a separate entity, one that should work for the betterment of magic in the world. If Takesis is victorious, Kryn will become little more than a cold rock among the stars. Our Lord's dream will perish, and we cannot have that. What do you want? It's not so much what we want as what we can give.
Give? The silver dragon, silent through much of this exchange, narrowed her eyes and laughed sarcastically. A black robe gives nothing but misery and death.
An unjust falsehood. However, in this case, any misery and death we shall deal shall be aimed towards Dracos and his ragtag band. But we need an opening.
An opening? What do you mean?
I offer you this.
The mage held out a bony hand. In his palm rested a tiny green sphere.
Unless you can get close enough, you'll never see the castle of Galandracos. It lies on the edge between our plane and the abyss. With this, you will be able to locate it.
The silver dragon scoffed. Is there not the matter of your former mistress, the Dragon Queen? Is she to step idly aside while we charge the domain of her most trusted servant? The spellcaster indicated the dragon lance.
I'm told she has doubts about these, that she remains within the confines of the castle, near the path to the abyss, because she fears the power of the dragon lances.
Preposterous. Huma, I won't let you. The silver dragon turned as she spoke and froze at the look on his face. Huma, you cannot believe this. The knight ignored her. What will you do when we strike, assuming that we do?
Within the castle, the remainder of the Blackguard and those renegades who willingly follow Dracos will be your greatest threat. We shall deal with them. If possible, we shall strive to turn away the dragons as well.
Madness! A shadow loomed above. All three looked up to see Kaz and Bolt hovering. The Minotaur was shouting, "Be quick! I see the dragon scouting ahead!" The mage quickly turned back to Huma.
By Nuatari, I swear that my name is Gunther, and that you may trust me. Take it!
The black robe had sworn by his lord. For the followers of Nuatari, the penalties for breaking oaths were oft-times fatal. Huma reached down and accepted the small green sphere.
We are with you.
The mage vanished abruptly. Huma kicked his mount gently. She spread her wings and began rising, relief evident on her features. Kaz saw Huma's closed fist and blinked. "What is it?" Huma stared at the approaching sea of destruction and thought how simple the spell of darkness seemed now. He glanced down at the hand that held the small sphere. A desperate hope at best, I think. And just to round it out, piece of art on the lance itself. So, another 2 chapters down. We are now on page 311 out of 379. Nice. So, there's a lot of things happening nowadays. So just be brave, do your best, and hold close to the people around you. Take good care of yourself and anybody that you can. But in the meantime, get some rest and do your best to become somebody who you can be proud of. And if people can hate you without knowing a thing about you, then I can love you for exactly the same reason.